Hey, Diana, did you know you could teach your lawyers to act like Navy SEALs?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers and law firm leaders about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my number one, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Not much. I am fully leaning into this number one thing, Mark.
I know. You are the number one. Now, you almost got fired this week, I understand.
One of the newest fraud things that we have to deal with. I guess somehow I quote unquote, I had filed an unemployment claim. And then when that happens, it's obviously, well, I say it's obviously, it is fraud in this instance. And so you have to attest that it's fraud. So before I signed said attestation, I did have to email Mark and confirm that I was indeed not fired or otherwise let go, which is fun because Mark's been out. I lost track of the days. You're really only in office for what, 3 hours, and then you're jetting setting
I
again.
am
So
I am in between my Denver trip to my New York trip, and then God
we're
knows
not gonna get
wherever else I'm going. So I'm
yeah.
in here for literally 3 hours to do a podcast and to make sure that the checks don't bounce, and then I'm out of here again.
Which so that made for a fun email when I had to be like, "Hey, Mark, did you let me go?" But I owned it, which is what we're talking about today. The book we're reading for our EOS, I guess, quarter, Extreme Ownership, which is one of my favorites. It definitely made my one of my top 10 books when we did that episode. Mark, how are you liking the book?
So it's fun because I love military histories anyway. So this is a business book wrapped up in the story of the U.S. Navy SEALs and I believe basically Iraq, maybe some Afghanistan thrown in there as well. Jocko Willink and Leif Babin narrate the book. They are the actual authors of the book. So it's not some silly little British accent reading it. It is Jocko has got this big. He sounds like he's a football player. Leaf sounds like he's got that Navy growl to him. It's like, so it's really cool. It kind of puts you in the mood, and they tell you stories, about things that happened on their exploits in Iraq, and about their Navy SEAL training. But then they always bring it around to how it relates to business, because this is the brilliance of what they've done. I'm sure they did great things while they were in the Navy SEALs, but they probably got paid squat. So now they figured out how to take that Navy SEAL training and monetize it. And I know they do the speaker circuit and they do the consulting circuit. And I hope, given all of their service to this country, that they're making just boatloads of money doing it. But they've written a bestseller book. And so we, as a leadership team, have been reading the book. And today we're going to discuss some of the principles of the book, how I think they apply to law firms, to law firm leadership. And it's, like I said, it's a really interesting, great read. And of course, I read everything tech read. Read is, I don't read anything hardly anymore. Everything I do is I listen to on Audible. But anyway, I think it's a great book, and we're going to discuss it and go through most of the principles. They lay out 12 principles. We found 8 that we think really apply to law firms specifically. So we're going to basically focus on the 8 that we think really hone in on how you can lead your team and build a better law firm. I want to digress a minute and just say, just real quickly, about the whole Diana possibly being fired thing. That's never, ever, ever going to happen. There's only one way that Diana leaves here, and that's inside of a pine box. We're kind of like the mafia. That's the only way you leave the mafia is in a pine box. That's it.
Well, thank you, Mark. I'm glad I
You
have
don't
jobs
quit the
security.
mafia.
Yeah, that was a fun email that I got back from you when I was like, "Hey, by the way, did you fire me or otherwise let me go?" I had to cover my bases as a lawyer, right? It's not just fire me. Did you otherwise let me go? Because I've got to fill out this form now. So I'm glad I somehow got in the mafia,
Well,
Mark.
it should have clued you in when they misspelled your first name and they used your maiden name. So really,
Yeah, but I don't know that that works if you're attesting to a state document as fraud.
oh, you're such a high C. You're such a high C. But anyway,
Yeah.
we
Well,
digress. All right, so let's get really kind of into kind of a premise of the book. What is the core premise of this book?
I think I like the quote. Leaders must own everything in their world. There is no one else to blame. I think that Mark, you and I talk about this. It's really lonely at the top, and especially some of these decisions I can't make or won't make for you. I think that your favorite question to me is, all right, so how are you going to fix it? And I think I always toss it back to you because, like any good lawyer, I answer a question with a question. How much money are you willing to spend? What's your vision? Then tell me those two or three things, and I will give you what I think could be the best problem with those parameters or best solution for those parameters. And so, but at the end of the day, when there is a problem, it always, and I tell people this all the time, it sits at this desk more often than not, just because I do take that very personally. I own that one. I think obviously you are the named partner, your name's on the building, but I own a lot of the solutions that we put forth and the failure thereof.
I hate it when you ask me that question. How much are you willing to spend? You always lead with that. So, how about nothing?
Well, I
Nothing
can
is good.
definitely give you some solutions with nothing. I not don't think you're gonna like any of them,
I
but
think I think it's basically you're telling me that you can buy your way out of any problem. Just how much are you willing to throw at it? So,
oh, absolutely.
it's one of my favorite quotes of my grandfather. He always said, "As long as you can write a check, you don't have a problem. You just have a situation." I'm like, okay, I see that coming home to roost.
Well, and I struggled with that one because I've heard it for about 5 years now, Mark. We are approaching my 5-year anniversary. And I struggled with that one when we began, but now I feel it a lot more acutely when we're the level of the firm that you have built. And so I think about that, especially as it relates to ownership. We've got a problem. How are we going to fix it? And it resides and it looks in different ways, right? Whether that's building trust in our leadership team or the platform that we've built for this department no longer serves it because we have outgrown that particular structure. It's we feel it differently now.
Yeah. And one of the things about being a leader of the firm is like, you're under a constant level of stress, but it's a different kind of stress than back when I was sort of in the trenches because then it was very tactical. What do we do in the moment? And as I step back from the day to day of the practice of law and focus more on the management and the marketing of the firm and the leadership of the firm, it becomes more strategic thinking, which is a different type of thinking. It's also a different type of stress level. It's more, I would say, more broad. It's a more broad based stress level. It's not, I'm not stressing about deadlines or things like that. I'm more stressing about overarching results, projects, initiatives, trying to fix bottlenecks in the system, trying to make sure that people are trained properly, people are properly motivated. It's a different type of demand on my psyche. Um, but the stakes are still high, regardless, whether I'm dealing with an individual case or whether I'm dealing with an entire project or an entire business unit. Um, so again, even though I am far removed from even the smallest things in the firm, it's still ultimately my responsibility if the intake department doesn't answer a phone call correctly, or somebody feels that they've been slighted, or one of my intake specialists has been rude to me. Ultimately, it's still my responsibility because I have to own it under the concept of extreme ownership. So,
Yep, and I dare say that at the growth or the level that your firm is playing at now, Mark, it's weightier because, as I've told you before, and probably too much recently, I feel like your firm, especially where we are on the flywheel, it feels like a train and it's just going full speed ahead. And it's harder to stop a train. We're less of a dinghy in the ocean now, not quite the Titanic yet, though you have aspirations, I'm sure, of being the Titanic, but we're a good-sized boat in the ocean now, and it takes a lot more to turn it. And so I dare say that the weight is a little bit heavier now for those reasons. And the ownership, I think, is challenges you as a visionary, which is a great place to be. And this book, I think, challenged you in 12 different dimensions how to apply each of the principles into being that next level visionary.
yeah. See, your analogy there just brought me back to one of my most embarrassing times, when I got my new sailboat, and like I was had it out on the water, and I could sail downwind like nobody's business. You just pop the sails up and head in the direction of the wind, and you will be flying. Try to turn that sucker. I mean, it was embarrassing. I literally had to take the sail down and get a paddle and start paddling sideways to turn the boat, and then put the sail back up. And I'm glad there wasn't anybody out there watching me.
There's no video of this,
There's
Mark?
no video of
Oh,
this.
well,
It's just like, it is easy to go straight when you have the wind at your back, but when you got to turn, it gets hard.
and I feel like we're doing a lot of turning these days at the firm, and in like all the departments all at the same time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. At least some of my stories and my experiences from an operational level in a firm that's kind of at that key part of what I call a flywheel, what we've called a flywheel on this podcast, especially, and how you navigate that using the tenets from extreme ownership.
We'll be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right, Diana. So, extreme ownership. Give us the basics, give us the lowdown.
Well, so I think the quote, "There are no bad teams, only bad leaders." That's from the book, and that's really where it is. If you have anything breaking down in your team, it resides with your leader. I mean, there are scary statistics out there that your team or the unwanted turnover happens when usually because of a manager. And so, are you training your managers to be really good leaders? Is the way I sometimes think about that. Um, Mark, this one came home really quickly, and we've told the story on the podcast. But when we were at our 2-day annual for EOS, at which you spent a significant amount of money for us to be there, not only for our implementer, but also for our entire leadership team to be away from their dockets, for us to go somewhere, and you paid for all of that. And at the maybe near the end of the first day. So we still had a whole another day together, whole evening together. Do you remember what our implementer said to us? Me and
No,
you?
you're going to have to clue me in here now.
Oh my gosh, it lives rent free in my brain. We realized when doing Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team that our leadership team had didn't trust each other, and trust is the foundation of Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Without trust, you can't scale into a true team. And she looked at us and she goes, "Well, that's yours and Mark's fault." And I was like, "What?" I was
You were pissed. I could just your mood. You did not like that.
no.
Um,
And I think that that's really where when you hear those kinds of truths and you react that sharply, that's when you know there's something there that you need to examine. And I, thought about it that night, the next day, pushed through, and by the end of that, I called you and I said, "Hey, we need to talk," because she was right. I can say, "Hey, that's what we're paying you for." Right? That was my first initial reaction. We're paying you. Mark's paying you all this money, like, why isn't this your job? But at the end of the day, it really did reside in both of us, but especially me, to build trust in our leadership team. I came to you and the leadership team with some suggestions, and I dare say we're on the right path. I wouldn't say that we're completely trusting each other. We're not. We saw some dysfunction, if we were going to use Lencioni's words, but I think we're on the right path there.
yeah, I mean, I remember when she said that, and I guess you and I took it differently. I kind of took it as you know, oh crap, she's right. But I looked at it from more of a logistical, mechanical, practical sort of sense that I just need to train people harder. I need to come up with better ideas. I need to do a better job of disseminating my brilliance. Um, so I kind of looked at it. I kind of felt my reaction was guilt. Your reaction was anger, and I remember that in the moment when that happened. And I just thought that was so curious. Is different personality types.
And I do think that is why we work so very well together. You're like, "I can fix this if I just give you more training." And I'm like, "Oh, well, this is nothing. I mean, true lack of trust is nothing training can fix." It is, I mean, obviously you have to go through a lot of the same, trust exercises and those trust builders if you're going to use EOS speak. But extreme ownership really required us to both look at how we can help the leadership team gain trust in each other, because and I said it to you then, and I believe it now, without that foundation, we would be unable to grow and function as the way we need to get to the level of growth that you want to.
Yeah. All right. So I was looking at this concept, I guess, which is number two on our list, but it kind of melds into the first part of extreme ownership. There's no bad teams, only bad leaders. And here's the gut punch quote um, that really struck me, which is, "It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate." And we have talked ad nauseum before that Mark's real downfall is holding people accountable. And that's exactly what that quote said. It's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate. And if you tolerate mediocrity within your firm, or if you tolerate bad behavior or bad habits, um, you know, you're not a good leader. And what they're really saying is you have to be able to hold people accountable. And this is my great downfall. This is my great weakness, which is, so every time I hear this quote, I have this guilt feeling, because I know I fail miserably on this. And the only thing I have figured out how to do is try to farm out that accountability to other people to some extent.
Mark.
In other words, I slough it off on you to hold
Yes,
people
sir,
accountable.
you do. But the things you're admitting on this podcast
It's
about
another
your
therapy session.
sailboat.
It's another therapy session.
Yeah, well, and I also think that, we're talking today about where your firm is at. We've just seen astronomical growth in the 5 years that I've been here. But I do believe that regardless of what size your firm is at, anytime you're growing to that next level or you're feeling some growing pains at some point, whether that's through revenue or team staff or number of cases, this book works very well for that, because you have to examine it at different levels. To take Mark, I mean, Mark is absolutely right. I'm just glad he owns it. I never really thought that he would, guys, when we were recording, like, because he and I talked this candidly to each other. I honestly just didn't know I would have it recorded. But yeah, before Mark had a me, there was you had a limited system for keeping um, keeping people accountable. I think that it's a lot easier to do this in terms of processes. Are you completing your tasks on time? KPIs, those types of things. Those can be very visible. The things that I would encourage all of our listeners to think
Know your
about is
numbers.
know your numbers. And that's the easy stuff. When you've got an employee maybe that's not working or you can't figure it out. I know this is the soft, touchy-feely stuff you don't like, Mark, but consider going back to your core values and figuring out. And I think this is why our people analyzer, go back to that EOS episode, guys. But I think that's why your people analyzer works so well. You can really figure out and dial in, okay, what is it about maybe this team member that's not causing this to be a good fit for the firm? And so, core values, it's not what you preach, it's what you tolerate gets only more important the bigger you grow. How many times, Mark, Atticus, from Atticus to our Pillman Mastermind, have we heard the exact same story in different fact patterns, different um, uh, law firms, different across the country? Well, I've had this team member and she's been with me for 10, 15, 20 years and I just can't fire her, but we also can't get her to, what is it? I can't get her on Litify. I can't get her to, play nice with others. Whatever the case may be, you've heard that story probably too many times to count.
So let me just say, here's the solution, and I know it, and I think I'm better at it than I used to be, and a lot of it is through the fact that we've now implemented, you know, a data-based management process is where I'm going to put it, which is, through the use of Litify, through the use of other technologies that we use. It is much easier to hold people accountable to numbers than to the soft, touchy stuff. So if you can figure out the numbers for everything, and this is what we're trying to do, you can easily hold it easily. I shouldn't say easily. You can more easily hold people accountable to numbers than to the soft stuff. So you start there. So you start holding people accountable to the numbers that they're supposed to be hitting, whatever it is in their particular job, whether it's, did you complete all of your tasks in a timely manner according to the Litify system? Did you get, all of your, filings done by a certain time? Did you get your discovery done? Did you settle your case within, the parameters that the evaluation committee set for a particular case? These are all numbers. These are all ways you can hold people accountable to numbers. So the hard part, but I think you hit on it with the core values, is holding people accountable to the more personal, interrelational leadership type stuff. And I did this a while back. I had somebody, an employee, that had done something that I thought needed to be called attention to. So I called that person into the office, and I picked out two of our six core values. I think one was teamwork and one was communication. And I went through, I said, this is how we define teamwork, and this is what teamwork means here, and this is what good communication means here, and this is what I saw that you did, and this does not live up to those two core values, and this is why. And this, and you remember you signed off on these core values when you came to work for us. Therefore, going forward, I would like you to remember and work within these two core values. That worked for a brief while with this particular employee, before ultimately she is no longer with us. But I would say that was one of my small victories where I actually did use our core values to hold somebody accountable. So I'm making progress.
Absolutely, and I think that I think that the structure of EOS has definitely helped you, especially as it relates to the people analyzers. I think that that's been good for you to have that consistency, and that leads us into the other topic from the book that you want to talk about checking the ego, because the way that this employee responded was not necessarily living up to that checking the ego, which it's one of the tenets from the book, as you mentioned. But um, I think, I don't know if it's Jocko or Leaf says this one, but he says ego clouds and disrupts everything.
Yeah, so check the ego. So nobody ever accused Mark of having an ego. No one ever said that's not
Not
true.
to
Of
your
course,
face
Mark
anyway.
has a massive ego. I will say though, my ego comes, um, I still come from a place of humility. I don't claim to know everything. As a matter of fact, I always live by the mantra, I need to be the dumbest person in the room. In other words, I hire very smart people to work for me and I let my smart people run. So I don't have an ego in the sense that I think I know everything. Um, but I still, let's face it, I'm 33 years in this business and I can list you 3 pages worth of accolades of people who've said Mark is great. So I mean, I do have an ego. I don't deny having that. So, but what I need to do is make sure that my ego doesn't cloud my judgment. My judgment needs to be independent of that. You just have to kind of check the ego, put it in a shoebox, stick it under the bed, um, and move forward. Um, because sometimes that's a problem for leaders is they feel the need to be the smartest person in the room, and what that means, you're limiting yourself to the capabilities of the leader. You can't expand beyond the whatever the leader can do, and that stifles an organization.
Well, and it makes it hard to participate on a leadership team. What, Mark? I think one of the things, especially as lawyers, we're very proud of our dockets. We're very proud of the judgments that we receive on behalf of our clients, and as we should be. That there's, like you said, there's nothing. Ego is okay with a good dose of humility. The way that I see it over my career is sometimes defensiveness when ego can be. When your ego is confronted with something you don't want to see. And defensiveness, as we all know, can be hard on a leadership team. So, I always think of the good therapist, I versus you. When you're saying something, make sure it's about I. I feel this versus. But then when you can notice when people who have perhaps who have lost sight of letting others take credit and letting where their ego is clouding things. Is when their defensiveness comes up and it says, you did this. And if you had just done your job, I would have been able to do this. And those types of things make it very challenging to participate more fully and build trust on a leadership team.
Right. And the other thing ego does is, like, it 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 keeps you, if you can't keep your ego in check, it makes you take credit for the victory, when the reality is the victory is a team victory, and the victory, the credit for the victory needs to be shared with the entire team. um you know and I think they really pointed that out in the military setting, with the Navy SEALs, that um the leader, a good leader, took the blame when things went wrong, and when things went right, the leader, basically sh- gave credit to the team. In other words,
Oh,
it was a team
absolutely.
victory.
Yeah. I mean, and I try to live this with everything I put out. Guys, this isn't working and it's because of me. But you guys made all this happen.
Mhm.
Every success we've had, it's not because of me, it's because y'all got in the weeds. One of the next things you wanted to cover, Mark, was simple. I think you like this one.
Keep it simple, please. What's
Yeah,
the phrase? Kiss, keep it simple, stupid. You
there
know,
you go.
um, Plans and orders must be simple, clear, and concise. This is one of the mantras of the military. Um, and that's because everybody on the team needs to understand what's going on, and if I sit here on high and pontificate from a lawyer's perspective, how am I going to get that message down through my lawyers, through my managers, through my case managers, my paralegals, my clerks, my medical records clerks, the nurses that work for us? They all come from a different background and from a different, you know, have a different language that they speak in terms of what their day to day activities are and what their responsibilities are. And the worst thing that lawyers can do is lawyer it up. You know, keep it plain, keep it simple, keep it clear, keep it concise, where everybody can understand it. That way, everybody knows if they're winning, everybody knows if they're losing, everybody knows what success looks like, everybody knows what failure looks like, because it's very plain right in front of their face.
Yep. And And I'm going to take a quick detour and explain. I think another reason why not only I think lawyers, but your entire leadership team should read this book. So as I mentioned, our leadership team's reading this book, and we had just finished part two, where simple that chapter resides. And I participated in a call just yesterday with one of your attorneys, Mark, and a team leader, basically the right hand to the attorney in that department, and they were struggling. There was a metric on the EOS scorecard that during the level 10, it became very apparent that the team members did not know how to calculate the metric. They didn't really know what it meant. They were guessing all over the place. And so we had a meeting after the level 10 meeting to discuss what's going on. We're 2 months into the quarter. Why are we still struggling? And after sitting on the call for about 5 to 7 minutes, I said to the attorney, I was like, hey, attorney, you know what I'm thinking of right now, right? She goes, what? I said, the chapter simple and extreme ownership. And she's like, oh, got it. And from then on, we came up with a very easy solution for how we were going to move forward to close it out in the quarter. They didn't understand it, but being able to talk the same lingo and shortcut it with your leadership team brings home how you can make these books that can be a little amorphous, real and tangible for your leadership team. So I like the simple one for very easy reasons.
Yes, very good. What we got next?
Prioritize and execute. I mean,
Oh, I love
I
this
love
one.
this.
This
Yeah,
is my love
why
language.
do you like this one?
This one hits home to me. I mean, I preach, the 40X system. I preach the EOS system. I preach scaling up. I preach 7 habits of highly effective people, and all of them revolve around the same concept of prioritize what's important and then execute on what is important. Do not let the minutia of the small things overwhelm you and drown out what is important. And I've been preaching this in, reading on this subject for 20 something years. It's my love language. It all revolves around my quarterly rocks, you know, um, which are our priorities for what we're trying to accomplish. It's all about making sure the big picture gets done. And that is such a problem in the legal industry when we are so, deadline to deadline driven, case to case driven. We lose the forest for the trees. It's inevitable. And it always comes back to looking at the big picture, prioritizing what's important in the big picture, and then executing on it.
Yep. I mean, what's the adage we've always heard? If everything is important, nothing is important. And I see this at different levels of the growth, the firm's growth at every level, not just attorneys, but also especially the team themselves. I feel like especially with our high touch clientele, and what I feel like many of our listeners have high touch clientele, whether that's in the PI space or the estate planning space. Um, you're what becomes your task lists, the returning the phone calls and all those things. You just do those first because you get highly reactive, where and it's not you're not using basically the Eisenhower matrix to realize what's truly important. What do I need to move forward today? And so I think that every once in a while, I think this is the second time I've had to do it. One in my tenure here, I take a team back and I'm like, okay, guys, what do we really need to work on? Because we're at a different level of growth now. You have a lot of tenure in this firm, Mark, and sometimes we can just kind of get on repeat where we're just, we're just getting in. Okay, let's respond to the emails, return the phone calls, return the case status messages, make sure we're prepared for the onboarding call, and you get again highly reactive, which is not necessarily prioritizing and executing, which is why I also love this chapter.
I think what sometimes people do is they tend to they have so much stuff sitting in front of them, right in front of their faces, and they
Hmm.
tend to sort of panic. They look at like how they start hyperventilating. I can just see it. Some of my people, and just like, what do I do? What I don't. I'm overwhelmed. They'll say this all the time to
Yeah.
me, Mark. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm like, So the quote that I really like from the book is: relax, look around, make a call. Okay, just number
Yes.
one, relax. Stop feeling overwhelmed. Just take a moment, relax. Again, look around. What's going on? What's important, and make a call and just go with it.
Yep, and I think that that's really, like you said, the best way to be able to execute, especially as we near the stretch, the Q4 stretch, to finish out the year strong, prioritize and execute.
Mhm. All right. So the next one is sort of in that vein of prioritize and execute, which is plan. And the quote I like from the book was, if your team doesn't understand, you have failed. Your team needs to understand what the plan is. What are the priorities? It's not enough that you know what the priorities are. Your team needs to know, and that's why, what I like about the EOS system that we've adopted, in the rocks and the weekly level 10 meetings, and the fact that we go over our vision plan. Everybody knows what the plan is. Everybody knows where we're headed. And we have our monthly all staffs where we go over this, and we have our quarterly vision meetings where we go over this. Um, that way, it's not enough that you and I know what the plans are. Everybody needs to know. Everybody's
Mhm.
got to know.
Yep. The quote that I like from the book is that the mission must explain the overall purpose and desired result or end stage of the operation. I came to you recently, Mark, and I was like, I think it's time. I need to get in the weeds on SSD again, Social Security, one of our departments again. And you were, I mean, to your credit, you were like, okay, I agree, but tell me why. And in doing that, I had to get crystal clear about what questions I was answering, and what end I was trying to achieve. What does success look like for this quote unquote mission? Because having me in the weeds, I mean, we've worked so hard to get me out of the weeds. But the reality, the hard truth that I had to own was that some of my recent implementations, endeavors, solutions, whatever you want to call them, were not working. The KPIs were showing challenges, some friction within the team. And so I felt like I had to really kind of get in the weeds. But the goal is not to have me in the weeds of any department. And so we had to know when I was going to get out, what aims were we trying to achieve, so that I would know, hey, okay, Diana, it's time, because I can, like everybody else, I can get very comfortable getting in the weeds on things rather than trying to do the big picture thinking of, okay, what other departments need my support? What other things do I need to do to make sure that the firm is positioned for the growth? And so the only way to do that was to really recognize that the platform that you had built when I came to the firm of 700 plus 750 cases is not the same platform that we had to evaluate when we were at 1500 cases, is not the platform that's working now at 2500 cases. And every one of those tranches required a different platform and me to really kind of better understand the problem. And then, using another book, I don't think we talk about this chapter, but really making sure that then I communicate that down to every member of the team, and they understand how they can now, at this level of growth, execute your vision.
The next one, decisiveness amid uncertainty. I love this one. The quote is, there's no 100% right solution. The way I interpret this is, you're never going to have all the information that you would like to have before you make a decision. If you try to get as much information as you can, but you'll never have all the information you really need. At some point, you just have to be decisive and pick a path and go with it. And I like this, Jim Collins, fire rifle shots, then cannonballs, which, the analogy being, um, take small risks and move in a direction, but don't commit yourself totally. Give yourself the opportunity to change direction or to go backwards. Um, and if you combine these two principles together, you know, say you have 60% of the information you need. Make a decision, go with it, but understand that you may have to back out of that decision because your information is not perfect, or you may have to pivot, or you may have to take a different direction. um, and that's fine. But at least you've made a decision, you've been decisive, and you picked a path. And even if the path doesn't work out, well, at least you've learned what path doesn't work.
Yep, the Markism that came to mind when I was reading this chapter was, never let progress, or never let perfection get in the way of progress. Yeah, right.
Right. You can't ever get it perfect, but if long as you can get it as correct, and as good as you can get it, you're fine. Just keep moving forward. It's not perfect, but it works.
Yep, and I think that especially now in the day and age of decision fatigue, I'm not a Starbucks girl, but the choices, I mean, because sometimes we'll order Starbucks for a meeting, the number of choices that someone has to make these days just to order a simple coffee is, and I guess it's not simple if you have this many choices,
Then you
is
gotta learn some
absolutely
language. You like, what's venti, grande, and tall? I mean, like,
foam
how about
and
small,
matcha.
medium, large? Why
I just
overcomplicate this?
Yep, I just need a black coffee, please, and then they're gonna ask you what roast, and I'm like, "I yep." So, in this
Do you know
day
how
and
many
age,
choices of milk you have?
yeah,
You know?
black, like my soul, Mark. So I think that, in this day and age of decision fatigue, I think we're all at that point, and especially your team leaders. That's what we call them in this firm. But your managers, watch your managers, especially if you're a growth firm like Mark is. They're like, I don't know, and they're going to spin before they'll make a decision. And sometimes I just had to do this with one of your team leaders. I was like, nope, we're done. And I just was like, nope, you're going this way. Doesn't matter if it's not perfect. You're going to make like, okay, pick one, flip a coin. We're gonna get off dead center today.
Yeah.
And it wasn't fun. That's okay
But I
though.
bet
I
it
think
felt
she
good
still likes
afterwards,
me.
didn't it? I bet it felt good afterwards.
No, well, I mean, yeah, that's another podcast. We need to do a therapy session on Diana's leadership skills lately. So, but the last chapter, Mark, was my favorite.
Alright, bring it home, last one.
Discipline equals freedom. I love it.
Alright, explain to me what that means, because this one I was, I my gut is I understand it. I'm not sure if I know how to explain it.
Well, can I just read you a quote from the book? It's kind of long.
You may do whatever you like.
Thank you. Oh, I love this. A good leader must be confident but not cocky, courageous but not foolhardy, competitive but a gracious loser, attentive to details but not obsessed by them, strong but have endurance, a leader and a follower, humble, not passive, aggressive, not overbearing, quiet but not silent, calm but not robotic, logical but not devoid of emotions, close with the troops, but not so close that one becomes more important than another. Able to execute extreme ownership while exercising decentralized command. A good leader has nothing to prove, but everything to prove. And I think that to me is just that's it right there. When we talk about building your firm and the leaders that you will need to to be able to execute on your vision. And that's true whether you're at a two-member team or now where Mark is at 70 people that it takes to make this whole engine churn. Um, those are the people you're going to need on board. And if any of those like if they're like, I don't like that, that's probably the one that you're going to have the hardest time either enforcing or really coming to grips with in yourself as a leader. But discipline equals freedom. I mean, my high C loves it, Mark. I feel
I knew you would be all over this one,
gives me all
so
the feels. I mean, I think you just make it so easy when you have discipline. There's just so many more things. The decisions become easier. I know that I'm going to wake up and walk the dog and work out in the morning. By 5:15, I am thinking about the problems that I'm going to tackle that day in my schedule before some people, and that's because everything's rote, right? So that's just an example of how, to me, discipline in your morning routine, can give you freedom to think about things and get you a leg up.
this is why I have you, because you're the discipline in the organization. I'm the visionary. I'm the one that's always coming up with just weird stuff, and if 10% of it sticks, then I call that a win. I'm will be the first to tell anybody that I am not a disciplined person in any stretch of the imagination. But it's good. That's why you're my number one, because you can keep the discipline going. You can keep me disciplined. You can keep the train running on time, which is what needs to happen.
Well, and I do think that that's good insight, Mark, because you did this 5 years ago, and it's I think been a good relationship to grow. So if you are a Mark in your own firm, find you a Diana that's going to help you stay accountable to things because there's just I don't think that you can get to the level of growth or your I mean you have very big goals, Mark, and there's no truer phrase than discipline equals freedom to get there.
All right. So when we come back for our final segment, we're going to have Mark and Diana's 5 action steps going forward and how to implement extreme ownership in your firm. We'll be back.
This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. Remember, Mark is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze.
And we're back. All right, Diana. So 5 action steps going forward. And I want to say that I come from my humble place in knowing that I'm not preaching to the world, that we actually do all of these things. These are all things that we are striving for. I think we have success in a lot of these areas, but I think there's still a lot of areas that Mark still needs to grow. So I don't come from a preachy position here. I come from my humble servant position.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Mark. Well, as long as they have the framework, Mark, what's your number one?
I mean, the just going back to the premise of the book, in total, which is own everything. Stop the blame game. Instead, fix the system, fix the processes, fix what is broken, but understand that you, as the owner of the firm, as the leader of the firm, you own everybody. So stop blaming people and start getting down to fixing what is broken. Anytime there's a problem in an organization, you either have a problem with a system, or you have a problem, with your training, or you have a problem with, your hiring processes, or you just don't have the right people in the right seats on the bus. So that's all on you. So, stop blaming people and start working on owning it and fixing the problem.
So my takeaway number two in our five would be keep it simple or simplify your processes. I like the simple chapter. Um, I think that there was Amazon or one of the Bezos, I believe, is like no PowerPoints allowed. It's like you just got to keep it real simple about what problem you're trying to solve. I also like the 3 boxes exercise that we did through EOS. I don't think it's a true EOS tool, but one of the things that you did is like you get your team leaders or your managers to, I mean, even I think I'm going to do this with our case managers, Mark, is like, what are your 3 main responsibilities? You- And how are you spending your time? And make sure that that aligns with your manager. So, for example, if you're spending 50% of your time on administrative things, whether that's responding to, PTO requests or whatever, and you're a lawyer, maybe we need to get you some support. We need to maybe get you down to 30% because that doesn't align with how Mark's spending your time. But that's a really great tool that I found to really simplify what is it I do every day and what is it am I responsible for every day.
Yeah. Scripts and checklists, build those for your team, or have them built for your team. Those are beautiful things. And some of the most important jobs out there are ruled by checklists. So I'm sitting there, I've been on planes all week, going on a plane again tonight. I'm sitting there, I'm peering into the cockpit sometimes, and you can see the pilots in there. They've all got their checklists going, because they've got skin in the game too. And they're going to make sure that they're going to get that plane there on time and safely. So just simplify it for your people best you can. Number 3 on our list of 5 action steps going forward. This is mine, what I love. Empower your leaders at all levels. Basically, the concept of decentralizing command. Your lawyers need to have the authority to take care of what they need to take care of. You need to give your middle managers the authority to do the things that they need to do, and so forth and so forth. The bigger an organization becomes, the more decentralized by nature it's going to be an effective organization. Otherwise, you're just going to create a bunch of bottlenecks and choke points if you don't give people the power to take care of whatever is sitting immediately in front of them.
Yeah, but I really like that one about decentralized command. My last takeaway, because I've got number 4, Mark, is of course about building discipline into your daily habits. Um, I mean, obviously, I kind of gushed last segment about this one and how discipline, in my opinion, can create some long term freedom, and it's ugly at first, and I think that is why we as leaders shy away from it because it just creates chaos. You are disrupting how people are beginning their day, how they structure things. I mean, more often than not, especially whenever it's someone in my position that comes in and says, "Hey, how are you doing your day?" Okay, well, let's try it this way. There's a lot of resentment and issues like, well, Diana, I've been doing this job for 4 years now. You can take a step back, go stay in your own lane, right? But I think that sometimes if you can show them how the discipline can equal some freedom and allow them greater, I think, flexibility and freedom in their caseload, then it absolutely can create a happier, more proactive team as your firm grows.
And our last of the 5 action steps is my favorite, which is prioritize ruthlessly. Tackle one mission critical task at a time before moving on to the next one. Um, it's all about the Eisenhower matrix, as we talked about. What are the most important things that move the needle? You need to basically cut out the minutia. Set aside minutia for 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon if you're even here that long. And if you decide to go to happy hour at 4 o'clock on Friday afternoon, screw the minutia. It'll be there next week.
Take it to
But
the bar like we did.
take it to the bar. That's what we did last Friday. We had a meeting, and the only time we could schedule it was 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. And it was like, screw this. We know where to go. And we're
So
just
like, hey, Mark, if you're going to do this meeting on a
sitting
Friday
there with our
afternoon,
cocktails and our
gonna have
laptops
French
out
fries.
and just, try not to spill your drink into your keyboard. Um, you know, but it's all about prioritization, figuring out what's important, moving the rocks, the big rocks. Um, Stepping back, I would say that this is probably one of the more entertaining books that I have been assigned to read in a long time. And I get it, I'm sort of into military history, so I kind of get into the when they're talking about the different missions that they were on, and then how they relate that to business. So I get it. It sort of falls right into my genre of reading to begin with. But everybody in our team, I think, has loved the book. I haven't heard anybody complain about it. So I think it's a really good read. It's a really easy read. Um, and, um, it just sort of struck home. It did sort of strike home. So,
I think it was a good reread for me to challenge me at this level that you were asking me to perform. So even if you've read it, I encourage a reread.
yes. Excellent. All right. So what's next, Diana? How are we gonna make this click? How are we gonna make it work?
That's a great question, and I'll get back to you on that, Mark, because I was not
Oh
prepared for
hell, I
that
was
one.
just putting you on the spot right now.
I know. I don't know.
Okay. Well, all right. Well, we're gonna work on it. So we'll report back, and
Yes.
we'll report back in a few podcasts. So,
If you have any ideas, let us know, listeners.
okay. All right. With that, I'm getting the high sign that we're out of time. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark,
And I'm Diana.
and together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcasts. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, remember to forward it to your friends. Hit that little forward button on your phone. You go down and you find a little arrow at the bottom. You hit the arrow, and then it says if you want to text it or email it or whatever. Forward it to your friends because we want to get the word out. And be sure to visit us at successfulbarrister.com for a lot of free goodies. And if you want to sign up for our printed newsletter. And don't forget to visit our sponsor, Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability law firm at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.